we loaded on the bus heading for Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training. And I remember coming back through my hometown of Moorhead down Highway 60 at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And wasn't a soul on the street. And I was stretching my neck as far as I could, trying to see somebody that I knew, because I figured once I get on the other side of town, I'm not going to see this town again for quite a while. But not a soul on the street. Anyway, we got on down to Fort Knox and went through the reception station, and it was a real treat there, getting just a taste of what we thought basic training was going to be like. But of course, a few days later, once we got our military uniforms and got into basic training, it was a whole different ball game. And I can remember, that's another highlight I remember real well, that my drill sergeant was Drill Sergeant Holiday. That's one thing, you never forget your drill sergeant's name. Mm-hmm. Never.
Right.
Drill Sergeant Holiday got us out in formation, and he started reading the orders. He'd call each name. He'd have the piece of paper with your orders on it. He'd call your name, tell you where you were going for AIT, what your MOS was going to be, because they assigned you in the MOS. You didn't have a choice. And I remember him reading those names off. When he got to my name, he would, he said, Private Phillips, you're going to Fort Lewis, Washington. You're 11 Charlie, which is infantryman. And he said, since you're going to Fort Lewis, Washington, that's a port of debarkation. My guess would be after AIT, you'll be headed straight to Vietnam. And I thought, that's really exciting news. But he'd do that to everybody, and he would say, the ones that going to to Fort Polk, Louisiana, mm-hmm. You're probably going to be at 11 Bravo, and you're probably going to be going to Vietnam immediately after AIT too. But I normally, when I was drafted, I weighed around 140 pounds. And by the time I got out of Airborne School, I had jumped up to about 165 pounds. And then I got to Ranger School, and we had 3 weeks there at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then 3 weeks up in Dahlonega, Georgia at the Mountain Ranger Camp. And then we had 3 weeks down in Florida in the swamps for your swamp training. We did a lot of jungle and swamp training back then, because that's what the war they were fighting in Vietnam was, mostly swamp and jungle. So that's what they practiced. By the time I got out of the swamps in Florida, and they put us on wasn't a Greyhound, it was the other bus they had back then. They put us on a bus, and we came back to Fort Benning for graduation. And when I got back to Fort Benning, I weighed 130 pounds. I'd gone from 160 or 65, whichever I weighed, down to 130. When I went back on that 20-day leave, after I got my hunger quenched, because I went home, like I said, I weighed 130 pounds. Mm-hmm. And this is how hungry you were from living through the swamps in Florida, where you got little to no food. Mm-hmm. 10 days after I got home on that 20-day leave, I had went from 130 to 190 pounds.
Oh my God. Wow.
In 10 days, I gained 60 pounds. That was a temporary weight. But
do you remember the first thing that you were looking to eat? Like, what were you missing the most?
Everything. I could back up, and I can tell you this: when we came out of the swamps in Florida to back up to the base camp there at Eglin Air Force Base, the cadre's wives had a cake sale, and I'd had a $20 bill stuck in the bottom of my shoe for 9 weeks, and I bought two big chocolate cakes from those women that were selling them. And I sat down over there and leaned up against a Quonset hut. The sun was shining. I finally getting dried out. And I had to eat that cake with my hand, just like a baby would on his first birthday. And I ate 2 cakes right there, and that was nothing. And then I bought a big sack of candy and potato chips and pretzels to eat on the bus on the way back to Fort Benning. Trailways bus, not Greyhound, it was Trailways.
As soon as you mentioned the bake sale, I totally knew where that was going.
And we started the commando school. They said that when we left, the colonel said that we've heard that this school is harder than the United States Ranger School. I said, well, if it's any harder, it's going to be tough. But we got there, and it was not nearly as hard as Ranger School. They give you food to eat there. You have to go on a lot of recon, and you do a lot of marching. They did a lot of mountain climbing, rappelling and mountain cliff climbing. Had a escape and evasion course that was 26 miles long. They actually took you out into the middle of a town and dropped you off. You wasn't in the woods, you was in a town where you had escape and evasion all the way back to the castle. And if you get on the roads, they'd come along and pick you up, then you'd be caught. So you kind of had to use the roads when you felt like you could, and stay off the roads when you could. But I remember we got back a couple of 3 days later. We got back to the castle, but the castle then, we looked over, and it was on the far side of a river that was almost twice as wide as the Ohio River is here in Ohio. So we had to figure out how we're going to get across there. Looked around and found some people with boats, and I guess most of them had been instructed, don't pick up any military and take them across the river. They got to find out their own way. But we found some. We found one. We got to ride across the river.
During commando school?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And they took us across the river and let us out, and we made it back.